Luke McCown, welcome to the podcast, my man.
Yeah, hey, thanks, Nick. Appreciate you, man. Thanks for having me.
Really excited about this conversation. I'm typically always decently excited about every conversation that I have because I love interviewing people and picking their brain and getting to hear their story. But your story is certainly unique, and I think the audience is gonna hopefully gain a lot from your journey, your trials, your tribulations in the NFL, and especially and even post NFL for that matter. But Luke, I always start off with this question with all my guests. If no one knows who you are, if someone's just clicked on this and they have no idea who Luke McCown is, they're seeing you for the first time,
Yeah.
why do you think they should stick around and listen to what you have to say?
Well, that's a great question. Uh, you know, I would humbly say there's probably no reason why you should stick around and hear a guy from a small town in East Texas that sounds like he just rolled out of the back of a farm truck. There's probably no reason why you would listen to me, except that if you're interested in sports or high level football, quarterbacking. I got a little bit of experience there. Myself and my older brother spent a combined 30 years playing the toughest position in all of sports. And somebody that's listening on here will say, well, you didn't play, you stood there and watched. And I'm like, yeah, that's probably right. I stood there and watched most of my career. You're correct. But for that matter, I had a front row seat to one of the greatest of all time, in my opinion, the greatest of all time to ever do quarterbacking. And so I feel like I have a little bit of an understanding there about what it takes. I'm a Christian, a follower of Jesus, firm believer in the scriptures, in how important they are to me in my life, and the value that what Christ taught in his life, not only what he taught, but the value that he intrinsically says each human has, because we are made in the image of God. If you want to hear about that, you should probably tune in, because I cannot separate who God has made me to be and what I believe about who he made me to be from all the other, what somebody might say is separate from that. It's the core of who I am. And so there's nothing that I do that's separate from my identity in Christ. It starts there. And so that's if you want to listen to that, you'll be good to tune in. And if you don't want to listen to any of that, then you might go find another podcast. But I encourage you not to. But those would be a few things that I would say are a little bit about me. I understand the value of hard work and what it takes to be successful, and how to set your mind on a goal. I wanted to play quarterback in the NFL since I was in the second grade. My second grade teacher told me, honey, you should probably pick a different thing, something a little more realistic, like like a fireman or a policeman or a doctor or a dentist or something like that. And I said, no, ma'am, I'm going to play in the NFL. And so how to set your mind on one thing and be disciplined enough to go chase it no matter what it takes. So if you want to hear a little bit about that, I would say tune.
I'm scrambling to write down all the follow-up questions that I have,
Oh,
in addition to all the questions that I already came in with to ask, because your story is so unique, and the way that you just framed everything that you said, it riles me up. And, I said I was excited before we started recording. I am now even more excited. So congrats, Luke. You got me,
cool.
real riled up here to talk. So I want to double click on this. I just had Tom House on the podcast.
Oh
For
yeah.
those unfamiliar with Tom's work, he legendary coach, both within the realm of baseball, and then he also transitioned to football, worked with Drew Brees. I know you were close with Drew and played with
Yep.
him, worked with Tom Brady, worked with a lot of the top quarterbacks in the NFL, and then also a lot of the best pitchers in the baseball world.
Yeah.
And one of the things that Tom and I just talked about was, it's funny, we actually recorded this morning at 6:45, which is by far the earliest I've ever done a podcast. So that was certainly interesting. But one of the things that we talked about extensively was this idea of being risk adverse, and
Sure.
how a lot of times when you listen, when you gather advice from others, typically it is risk adverse advice. And so I think the
Yeah.
poster child for this are parents. So
Yeah.
parents will, most of the time, the advice that they give you is more so along the lines of a safe path, right? exactly what your mother said, right? Maybe,
Yeah,
hey, sweetie, maybe this football thing, maybe we're dreaming a little too big here. How about we do something else, something that's a little more safe? And, my parents love them to death, but for the longest time, we're kind of in that same manner. Hey, these dreams that you have are really cool, but hey, how about, being an engineer? Like maybe that's a
yeah,
little safer. So how do you, and I think a lot of people struggle with that, and they struggle with risk in general. So I'd be really curious to hear your thoughts on how you view risk and how you chose the life, I guess the riskier life versus taking the safer path.
yeah. That's a great question. I grew up a sawmiller's son. So when I say you're listening to a guy that rolled out of the back of a farm truck, that's pretty accurate. Small town East Texas, country, and Dad was an entrepreneur, highly intelligent, um, kind of a go getter, upstarter. Didn't go to college, but scored like 33 out of 36 on the ACT. Um, was just a very highly intelligent guy that made the most of what was in front of him, and took a fledgling sawmill business that my granddad and his father-in-law um, built or started, and took it to become a multi-million-dollar company. And it was very much risky, right? The at that time, the safe play was if you could go to college. I mean, we're talking about the mid '60s, right? If you could go to college, and get a degree, get an education, become an engineer, become a teacher or a doctor, whatever. At least have that. At that point in time, college education was probably valued more than it is today, and because it was so rare. It was so rare to have somebody go to college and go specialize in a profession, go learn about it. And nowadays it seems, I don't want to paint with too broad of a brush, but it seems that college education is just something that's there, and many times you don't, unless you're specialized like a doctor or dentist or something like that. It's just a degree that you went and got, and you're not really using it necessarily towards a particular occupation. Well, back then it was much more advantageous for you to go and get a college degree. It meant something. I mean, you were educated. It meant all the different things, right? And so it was probably a lot more risky that he didn't go to college when he had to, but he got married young. Mom and Dad got married at 18, which was not too out of the norm back then. Started having kids at 21, and so his need to provide, his understanding to providing for a family, drove his that was his incentive to go and tackle the risk that was a sawmill. Like, how do you know this sawmill is going to do great? How do you you don't know all the ins and outs of it. And so I always say this: leaders have to be problem solvers, and that means that you can't see around the corner. You don't know what's there, but you got to be able to solve whatever is there. And so those things are risky. Diving into things that you really don't know all the details about, and yet being confident enough to go and do it, and believe in yourself enough, right? And so, man, it's risky uh, to set your mind on one goal in the second grade. It's risky, especially with something so specialized as I'm going to play in the NFL one day, and but I didn't have a plan B. Um, I went through high school, I went through college. My if you talk to my close friends, they would tell you, man, we knew there was something different about Luke from the get go. It wasn't necessarily physical. It wasn't necessarily that he was, you know, some wow athlete that everybody looked at and went, man, there's not many around like that. But there was a discipline, there was a commitment to the process and to the vision that he stuck with, um, and we knew that it was going to be different, and that's risky because you lose friends that way, or you're not involved in some of the extracurricular things that you may want to be involved in college. I talked to a high school yesterday or 2 days ago just about the same thing, and it's risky. It's risky because it's the fear of missing out, right? FOMO, right? It's the fear of what did I not get to experience because I decided to, fix my thoughts and my mind on this path of profession that I want to pursue. And so, we teach our kids. I got 6 kids of my own. My oldest is in college, but they're all about 2 years apart. So I've got 20, 18, 16, 15, 13, and 12. And there is a level of, no, you need to go try this. If nothing else, because you're going to fail. Failure is a part of life. You're going to throw interceptions. My son had a pretty rough day. My high school son had a pretty rough day at a 7-on-7 over the weekend or 2 weekends ago, and a 7-on-7 tournament where he's figuring out what he can and can't do with his right arm. And so the only way you'll learn what you can do or not do is take these chances, and it becomes risky because you might fail, and most likely you probably will fail. But failure is only problematic if you don't learn from it. Right? There's somebody out there, I'm sure, that said failure is only failure if you didn't get better from it. Right? And so there's an element of risk that we should, as parents, we should want our kids to take. We should want, there's a need and a process that they need to go through in order to figure out who they are, the ins and outs of it. And now, as a Christian, I believe that God orchestrates a lot of that for us, all of it. I believe that He either allows things in our lives or He ordains things in our lives. He either makes it happen or He allows it to happen. And so, that brings solace in my life. And as I look over my career and the way it turned out, and never reached the heights of the dreams that I had as far as a professional goes, but I lay my head down at night going, this is the plan that God had for me, right? And I can take risks with the things that come my way. I can pursue them with all that I have, knowing that whatever the outcome is, His word says that all things work together for the good of those who love Him and have been called according to His purpose. And so I feel comfortable with that. I give it to Him and go, okay, it either worked out or it didn't, but it doesn't necessarily have to do with me. It's the lessons that you want me to learn, and how that's going to shape my life from here on out. So that's a long way of saying, man, I think we should encourage risks in our kids. Now that doesn't mean like, hey, climb out there on that really thin limb in that tree and take that risk and see if it'll hold you to the point where you fall and break your leg. I'm not talking about that, but I am talking about pursue something with all your heart. Learn how to manage the emotions of failure and what comes with it, and how to grow through it, and watch how better you become as a man, as a woman, as a person, in the endeavors that you pursue again or after that.
I mean, very well said. As you were talking, I was thinking when you were mentioning risk and this idea that we should all pursue a little more risk in our lives. I read this somewhere, and I'm just going to steal it, and I wish I had remembered who said it so I can credit them. But they said that the riskiest thing is looking back on your life and saying, what if?
Oh, man,
Or
yeah.
saying, what if I just tried this idea that I had? And I
Yeah.
relate it to, I've mentioned it a million times on this podcast, but I'll do it again because it honestly changed my life. Jeff Bezos has what he calls his regret minimization framework,
Sure.
which is a fancy way of saying, hey, when I'm on my deathbed, I want to minimize the amount of regret that I have in my life.
Yeah.
And so he tells the story when he was choosing to start Amazon or stay at this firm that he was working at where he was making really good money. He was on a track to become really successful in the company. He said, I used that framework because I said, I will ultimately regret not starting Amazon
Mm.
more then I'll regret staying at this firm. And
Yeah,
so even now when I make decisions, as starting this podcast, I'm like, what am I going to regret more, starting it or not starting it? Well, probably going to regret not starting it more. So let me just do it. So
that's right.
that framework has, I just think we tend to overcomplicate a lot of decisions. And that framework is a very simple framework that you can use, that when you're stuck between two difficult decisions, which decision are you going to regret less when you are laying on your deathbed? And that's just
Sure.
been a huge unlock for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And it doesn't. And there's, like I said, that you're learning probably a lot of things that you wouldn't have learned otherwise unless you take that step, right? I
Right.
mean, you never know what you're truly capable of until your back's against the wall a little bit, right? I mean, and again, nobody looks at my career. Many don't look at my career and go, "Man, that was a great, successful career." They go, "Oh, you were a journeyman backup. You played for 5 different teams." And I go, "Yeah, and I say this. We went, the NFL has this thing called the Brain and Body Clinic. When you retire, you go and you go to the Mayo Clinic or whatever and get a brain and body assessment. And so what that does is you go through a round of psychological testing, MRIs, X-rays. I mean, it's a full day of work on your body. It gives you a baseline for your health and kind of where you're at physically. Because seemingly we'll never be as healthy as the day we retire from then on out, right? It's only going to go downhill. Knees are going to go bad, shoulders are going to go bad, whatever. And so, but you get a baseline, and it's a full workup. And I sat with a psychologist for an hour or two, and just kind of went over, a lot of guys deal with depression when they get out and different things, and go through all these different questions and whatnot. And, hey, but your career didn't go the way you had planned. Like, you dealt with these injuries and it never, won more than a handful of games as a starter, all these different things. Like, how do you feel about that? And I sat and I said, I feel really good about it. She kind of looked at me crazy, like, what do you mean you feel good about this? And I said, I gave it everything I had. And I realized that I was dealt some unfortunate blows. I suffered 3 season-ending injuries right on the cusp of becoming a starter. 3 separate times in my career. Like, those are out of my control. I can't do anything about those. But I put my head down, and as risky as it was to go back on a second ACL tear and play again, knowing that there's a higher likelihood that I did it, and I overcame that worry, and I didn't go out fearing that I was going to do it again. I went out and I just played, and or in my case, practiced most of the time, and so you never really understand the fulfillment that you get just from the attempt. Man, I'm glad I did that. You know what? I can rest. I'm not depressed. I'm not bitter about how my career went. I'm very much at peace with how it went, because, man, I went through a lot and I attempted it, and there were several times where I could have hung it up. I've got a nice little nest egg, and I don't want to go through injuries again, and all this different. I could have said all that. But no, I wanted to keep going, because I wasn't going to let the fear or the worry of getting injured again, or more letdowns or more disappointments, be the thing that drove my ship. No, it was going to be my confidence and my belief that I can still get it done. I can still play at a high level. I still have goals that I want to achieve. And again, ultimately, I leave it in the hands of my Lord and say, these are the goals I have. This is the talent you've given me. This is the place you've put me in. I'm going to give it all I got, and I'll leave the results up to you. and I can sleep good at night doing that. And so she looked at me, she's like, we've never heard that before in the years that we've been doing this brain and body thing. And we've never seen somebody so content with the way their career ended as you are. I said, I don't pat me on the back for it. I'm just being honest with you. That's just how I feel about it. And you'll just never know the gratification that you get from just the attempt. I don't. My dad always says there's no harm in trying. There's no harm in trying. You can only learn. Even if you try something and you fail at it, there's no harm in that. As long as you're learning, as long as you're growing, because you're going to find something out about yourself. If you're willing to look in the mirror, you're going to find something out about yourself through whatever it is you're pursuing and doing.
So true. I want to go back to kind of jumping around in your timeline here, but so you had said that since second grade, you had your eyes set on the NFL. That was your dream. You were dedicated to it and you fulfilled it. You got to the NFL, obviously. There is, to play devil's advocate here for a second with your own story.
Sure.
There is an element of survivorship bias with your story, right?
Okay.
People may see that, okay, Luke was dedicated from second grade. He was going to go to the NFL and he got to the NFL. I'd argue that there's probably more cases out there where maybe somebody was also dedicated from second grade they were going to make the NFL and they didn't make it.
Yep.
My argument would be that, actually, I'm not going to state my argument. I'm going to ask you this question. Do you think that level of focus from an early age is beneficial? And the reason I ask is because on the podcast recently, I've been having this debate, and there seems to be a larger debate online between focus and balance. And these seemingly two opposing forces. Sure. If you listen to Kobe Bryant, the late, great Kobe Bryant, he would say, focus on the one thing. That's your only goal. Go after it. Like, not a lot of balance. If you listen to a lot of entrepreneurs nowadays too, that seems to be the message. Focus on the one thing, ignore everything else. And then I talk to certain performance coaches or psychologists, and they'll say, well, balance is really key. You do need sleep. You do need friends. You do need family. You need these other things that make you whole, right? Like, focus is great, but make sure you have a balanced diet of everything else.
Yeah.
I say all that to bring it back to my original question, which is, like, how do you, if you were an outsider looking at your own journey, would you say, like, that was a smart thing to do?
As an outsider, understanding let's just narrow it down to football. Obviously, this is pretty broad scope, in regards to the context of it. But let's narrow it down to just football, right? You have a greater chance of getting struck by lightning and bit by a great white shark in the same day than you do playing in the National Football League. And I've got a son. I've got several sons, nephews that all want to do it, that all believe they can. And so, as a parent, having the conversations as early as this morning with, you can't look at your career or your expectation for what's going to happen through what I did or what your uncle did. It's so incredibly rare. That doesn't mean don't go after it. But understand the difficulty of the thing that you're pursuing, right? And have a little self-awareness. And so I would say that understanding the eliteness of what it is you're trying to accomplish, and then there's got to be some amount of self-awareness, self-reflection, right? It's kind of like when we were growing up. Hey, you can be whatever you want to be. Set your mind to it, and you'll achieve it, right? I mean, if you're a 5'6" white dude, you're probably not going to make it in the NBA. Right. I don't care how, set that as your goal. It's probably not going to happen, right? And so there's a little bit of understanding and self-awareness that goes into that, and that's healthy. That's extremely healthy. But you may not know that you're going to tap out at 5'6" until you're a junior in high school, right? I trained some quarterbacks that, and it's probably more on their dads than it is on them. But I train some that feel like, man, they're going to be, first round picks, and they're going to be. I'm looking at them going, no, he's going to be done growing by the time he's 15 years old. Like there's a healthy balance of self awareness that needs to happen. And I say all that to say the pursuit of excellence never goes out of style. The pursuit of that dream, it's not about the dream. It's about the journey. It's not about the levels you achieve, because only a very slim few of those actually achieve the heights that you dream of achieving. It's what you learn about how to go about things. I mean, just as early as this morning, again, I'm having a conversation about how businesses target, as far as going out and recruiting high level employees, they target military personnel that have had successful military careers and athletes, because there's a discipline and an integrity, a hard work, a mindset and a focus that's ingrained in those people that's highly attractive as far as being successful, as far as being a part of a team that's going to achieve something great. And so you learn those things by dedicating yourself to something. Now, somebody might say, well, in regards to sports, somebody may say, well, wouldn't you agree that specializing in a sport early on is bad? And I say, yes, 100%. Because the different ways that lessons come about, right? And the difficulties that you learn. So I would tell a basketball player not to only do basketball, man, go play football as well. I believe it was true. Let's see. Anyways, one of our past presidents that wanted our kids to play football saw the importance of it, because there was nothing else quite like contact sport that prepared you for, or that prepared you like the Army does, like the military does. So instead of sending our kids to military school, let's put them in contact sport where, man, I got hit and that hurt, but I'm okay. I'm not going to die from it. I got a bruise on, I got a cut on my arm. I got and so there's some of those things that you can't learn just playing basketball, like the physicality of life and dusting yourself off and getting back up and pushing through, a cold, rainy night where you're getting beaten. You're just wishing the clock would hurry up, but enduring it, right? And so I think there are some things that come with, you know what, I'm going to stick this thing out. I'm going to see it through the end. I'm focused on this, and because I'm focused on this one thing, I have to take these steps if I even want to sniff the door of achieving what I'm pursuing. I think a lot goes, again, it's going to accentuate all the characteristics of the things that you'll eventually do, whether you achieve that or not. It'll accentuate all the characteristics that are needed to be successful at the thing that you eventually do, even if it's not football or basketball or what have you, even if it's not that specialized thing. Now, I had plenty of sleepovers growing up. I had plenty of birthday parties. I had plenty of friends over and camping trips and stuff like that. I agree in the well-roundedness and the balance. I don't believe that, being at a 7-on-7 camp or an AAU tournament or a dance competition every weekend of a child's life is the best thing for them. Burnout is a real thing. But I think you let the kid come to the conclusion themselves. So I'll say this: my son that's in college playing college quarterback right now, 7th grade. He said, "Dad, I want to play quarterback." I said, "Okay, great. How involved do you?" I asked you, "How involved do you want me to be in it?" He said, "Well, I want your help." I said, "Well, hang on now." I said, "Jonah, you have to know that I only know how to do this one way. I'm not wired to go, well, we'll just go and have fun. And so when you say you want my help, are you saying you want my help to enjoy it and make the most of your seventh grade season? Or are you saying you want my help to reach the highest levels of what you want? So you've got to be clear on what you are asking of me. He said, no, Dad, I want to be good at this. Like I saw you be good at it. I want to be good at it. I said, okay, then you need to know there's going to be different hats that I wear. There's going to be dad hat, and then there's going to be the hat that encourages you and teaches you and maybe corrects you on the things that you need to be doing in order to get to where you want to go. And had we gotten 3 years into that, after waking up early, training hard, extra workouts, all the different things, and he was like, you know what, Dad, I think I would just rather, go fishing. I take that coach hat off and I put the dad hat on, and it's all good, because he figured out the limits to what he was willing to do to go reach the thing that he said he was focused on doing. And that's helpful, because when you point out, well, this is what's necessary, and this is what's necessary, and this is what's necessary to reach the goal that you say you want to reach, sometimes just through osmosis, they kind of figure it out. Well, you know what? Maybe I don't want to do this as bad as I said I did, right? But along the way, they learned what it took to, and so they set their mind on something else. You know what? I do want to go be a dentist. Okay, you understand that there's about 6 years of education that goes into that, and you got to stick with it, and you got to do it, and then you got to be a good dentist to keep clients, or they'll go to another dentist, and you've got to be. And so they learn all of that. It doesn't necessarily mean they're pigeonholed towards one focus, but they do learn what it takes to be successful and to be elite in whatever their practice is, whatever their profession is. And if it turns out not to be the professional sport or the lawyer or whatever, at least they learned, you know what, no matter what, in order to be highly successful, I've got to be singularly focused on the process of becoming highly successful. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I was reminded when you were talking about doing hard things and football and contact sport and wishing that the clock would just run out.
Yeah.
There's this Japanese concept. I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly. I believe it's called misogi. And I think we as in the Western world have taken that concept and misconstrued it a bit, but ultimately the whole point is picking one hard thing to do each year.
Yeah. Yeah.
And having that be like your overarching goal for the year. So like, for instance, for me, I was never a runner. I hated running. I played water polo in high school. I did swimming. I am a water mammal by all definitions.
I am not.
Well, there you go. But I hate running. And this year I told myself I would really love to run a marathon by the end of the year. Like that is my hard goal for the year. Like whether or not I'll actually get there, goes back to what you're talking about, embracing the journey and not the outcome. That is my misogi. And so I say all that because I resonate so deeply with what you were talking about when you said do hard things. And I've had Navy SEALs on this podcast.
Yeah. Yep.
And I've asked them, hey, what's the one piece of advice you have for anyone? I mean, these guys, they've been through hell and back, not just in their training, but maybe in real world situations.
Yep.
And every single time they tell me the one piece of advice is do hard things. You are more fulfilled. You have more purpose when you are in the pursuit of something hard. It doesn't even matter if you actually accomplish the hard thing. Literally what you just mentioned, just the pursuit of trying to accomplish something difficult, growing a podcast, running a marathon, whatever is hard for you, do that thing. And so that's why I love this concept of misogi. It also, listen, for as we get older, time flies. So I've been told. Everyone keeps telling me I'm about to be 30 years old. They're like, everything after 30 is a blur. I'm like, okay, man, we'll see.
I'm telling you, I'm about to be 45, and 15 years ago, I thought the same thing. It goes fast.
Yeah. And so I think too, like if you do one hard thing every year, each year is defined by that thing. I think maybe it helps slowing down time a little bit, and you can remember the years a little more clearly than just one big, jumbled mess. So anyways, all that to say, I really resonate with the concept of doing hard things, and I think a lot of people would benefit from picking one hard goal for the year and trying to achieve it.
Yeah, I agree. You know what? I said this. I'm probably not as not as enthusiastic about it now, but I said this right when I retired, and my wife was both dreading and fearful that I was being serious. But I told her I wanted to go climb Mount Everest, and she was like, "Are you serious?" Like, well, I don't know if I'm serious or not, but I kind of like the thought of it. And I'm like, I reached this pinnacle of athletics, pushing my body and kind of the Everest of sports, right? And now I'm done, and I'm kind of I don't think I'm done wanting to push myself to the heights of something else. And so I didn't go climb Everest or anything like that, but we've done a family camp in um, north of Estes Park, Colorado, a couple of times, and it's got a 12,000 foot mountain, which is nowhere near the 40,000 feet that Everest is, or 37,000, whatever it is. But I remember getting there the first time and going, I'm climbing that joker. Like, and anybody that's been to the mountains, especially when you're a sea level dwelling guy like I am, you get into the mountains that high up, and the first 2 or 3 days, man, it's pretty rough. Like the oxygen is different. You're lightheaded. You kind of, and I thought to myself, you know what? But I want to go do that, and so I did, and the next year we went back up, and me and the whole family did it, and it's about a 3 hour climb, and it's nowhere near. It's not like it's people climb 14s and 15s all the time, 17s, so 12 is no big deal. But it was the hard thing that for a guy that doesn't do high altitude very often, it certainly wasn't easy. And so I do. I think there's again, especially if you're wired to be an achiever. Like I find satisfaction in things that I achieve, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a great thing necessarily. So one of the other things that I did right when I retired was build a log cabin, and I didn't necessarily build it myself. I took down an antique log cabin. I did that myself and put it back up. I did that myself, and then I finished it all out myself. And got to the end of it, and I was like, man, I can't wait to do that again. That was fun. I enjoyed the heck out of that because I got to sit back and go, look what I accomplished. Now it wasn't something that was necessarily grinding or grueling or hard from that standpoint, but it's something that I'd never done before, and it's something that I had to solve problems at and fix my mind on and learn. I always one guy said this as far as your body, when we talk about training and stuff, when your body stops learning, it stops growing. That's why a lot of athletes, when they go from high school to college, they see new gains. It's not just about maturity, but college puts them through a different circuit, a different regimen, a new introduction to a lifting, running cycle and regimen, and so their body goes, well, I've never done this before, and it grows again. And our lives, our minds, our bodies, it's all the same, right? They all do the same things. When we stop learning, we stop growing. And so a hard thing may not necessarily be a marathon, right? It may not necessarily be climbing Mount Everest. It may be, let me go try something or think through something or solve something that I've never attempted or thought about doing before. And, going through the process and working things out that, that you quite honestly a year before thought I never would have thought building a log cabin would have brought satisfaction and gratification in my life. I wouldn't, but I'm an achiever. I find when I achieve something, that fills me up. And when I start something, I rarely, I was kind of like this as a test taker. your teacher would say, well, if you come to a problem that stumps you, skip it, go on, finish the rest of the test, and come back. I couldn't do that. I struggled with that bad. I was oftentimes the last to finish tests in my class because I would get to problem number 32, and man, I was just stumped on it, and I couldn't move on until I solved that one right there, and so struggle through that, struggle through solving a problem for which you didn't know the answer to, and you had to go search it out and research it and find out and all the different things, and watch how you grow and watch how satisfying that is.
I was just thinking, first of all, I was a terrible test taker. Well, I actually think I was a decent test taker in school, but I certainly got super nervous before tests. Like I
Yeah,
remember, especially like math tests. Like for me, like for some reason, math tests were just they were
100%.
crazy. And I remember like if I had a math test on a Friday, like the entire week, I'd be stressing over the math test, and I'd be nervous and I'd be a mess. Um, it's just funny to think back on those memories. And then I did engineering in college, which is
Oh
like
yeah,
almost entirely math.
all
So
math.
kind of funny, kind of funny how that works out. Luke, I did want to ask you because I think a lot of achievers, I think on the surface level, it sounds great to be an achiever. Like
Yeah,
you have this desire to win, you have this desire to achieve great things. You want to maybe selfishly to feed your ego, you want to make a name for yourself. Maybe unselfishly, you want to impact others. Whatever the reason may be, you want to go out into the world and do great things. But what I've found with a lot of high achievers is they have struggle switching off that high
yeah,
achieving mindset, and it
sure.
creeps into almost every part of their life.
Yep.
So how did you grapple with that? Did you struggle turning off the switch, or did it come easier to you?
Um, no, I would say that I probably struggle with it. The having children is a humbling thing, right? Um, because there is uh, the older they get, the more you have to let go, right? That type of thing, and you realize the less control you have. They've got to spread their wings. They got to make their own decisions, good or bad. They've got to do all of those things, and your achievement as a parent really has nothing to do with um, the level of achievement your kids have, the medals or the trophies or the straight A's or all that. That's not necessarily a reflection of you. So there's no achieving going on in terms of raising your kids. It's for me and my wife, it's submitting ourselves daily to the Lord and to what He has called us to, how He has called us to parent, and then reading our kids. They're all different. All six of them are different, different personalities, different goals, different dreams, um, and yet they all six expect us to be the same every day, right? As parents, they don't. Our kids don't want to see us different towards that kid than them or to their sibling or whatever. And so um, you don't hang your at least I haven't at this point in being a parent laid down my head at night, took my hat off, whatever, and thought, I've achieved it as a parent. I've done it,
Right.
right? Um, because tomorrow he's going to come with a dad, I did this, and you're going to be like, what? What are you talking about, right? And so I think the achievement is the consistency with which we parent each child, and the base that we give them to live their life, the morals and values that we instill in them through the Bible, through the Scriptures, um, through uh, evidence, an example based evidence of our walk with the Lord, right? And how we live our lives, how we treat other people. So you kind of have to lay down this thought of being an achiever as a parent because it never ends. There's no, I, I don't know. I mean, I guess my parents probably at some point, saw all their kids, get into successful marriages, become successful parents, have successful careers. And yet there are times when I go and ask advice of my dad, or I talk to my mom, and I'm sure they go, "What are you thinking?" you know,
Right.
like, and I'm a 40-year-old man, I'm a 45-year-old man. And so I don't know that there's ever, in other words, I think parenting forces you to put down the achiever, because every day it's different. Every day there's something else that your kids keep you on your toes about, and that's a good thing. I don't say that as a bad thing. I don't sit here and go, man, I wish I could see the final product in my children. Um, it's a lifelong journey of walking in obedience in our faith, walking in obedience to who God calls us to be, what He asks of us in Scripture, and then how we interact with the rest of humanity regarding that belief and faith, right? And so, um, but understanding that I'm messed up from the inside out. I'm flawed as can be. I have shortcomings, and so does my wife, and so do all my kids. And the hope of the feeling of achievement when it comes to our kids, I don't know that you ever get there. I can remember my grandparents when I was young talking to my parents about how you never stop parenting. You'll never quit being a parent. Doesn't matter if you're 80 years old, doesn't matter if you're 90 years old, you'll never stop being a parent. So I don't know that there's ever a level of, man, we achieved something finally. And so the achiever in me, being a parent's contradictory to that, right? It that goes against it. Um, but uh, Yeah, that's a great question, because I've never actually thought about it like that. And as I'm talking through it, I'm kind of going, well, um, you know, maybe you should, maybe, maybe there's segments that you find satisfaction and achievement, and then you just understand that there's never going to be a stopping point or a pinnacle to this aspect of life, and you find satisfaction in the journey of it. And you find satisfaction in living out, you know, again, as a Christian, as a faith follower of Christ, living out His commands in front of my kids every day. That's the achievement, right? And so there's certainly levels to that. I don't know if anything I just said made any sense whatsoever, but it's an interesting concept.
No, it certainly does. The part that stuck with me is your emphasis on the journey and not the outcome, and that it's almost becoming
Yeah,
a theme of, of this
yeah,
podcast.
sure, right.
But I think it's super important. And the reason I asked you that question was, I mean, a lot of it was selfishly because I struggled last about a year and a half ago. I really struggled with, anxiety and certain
Sure.
things, and I just think I tied myself too much to the outcome. And when that outcome was not
Yeah,
happening, I was like, wow, I'm a failure. I suck, right? All the negative self talk.
sure. Yep.
And so I really had to kind of develop this level of introspection and ask myself, like, why am I so tied to this outcome? Like, what's really driving me? What's
Right.
like, ask myself some of these questions that, I mean, it really forced me to get to know myself, which it's
Oh, good.
kind
Yeah.
of funny and crazy how little a lot of us know ourselves. Like we know our best friend, we know our family pretty well, we know our brother and sister. But if you were to ask someone like, hey, like, who are you and what do you believe in? I think a lot of people would struggle to answer that question. All of that to say, what helped me was focusing on the journey and this
Yeah.
concept of achievement. I almost got rid of that word entirely from my dictionary because I don't know that there is like the achievement. Like I don't know if that makes
100.
sense, but like
Yeah,
everything
that's-
is a journey. Like you are just constantly on a journey. You are never going to reach some mountaintop, my
yeah.
opinion.
Yep.
You may think that you're on a mountaintop, but guess what? Next day or 2 days later, you fall off the face of the cliff because something happened that you weren't
100%.
anticipating. And now you're no longer on this mountaintop. So, this idea of achievement and success, like I, I don't know, it helped me to get rid of those terms entirely and just focus on, all right, whatever happens, we're on this journey. We're just
Yeah.
going. there might be little pit stops, like you might stop at a, achievement gas station or
Yeah,
something,
sure.
or failure shopping store, whatever you want to call it. These are terrible analogies, but
No, I got it. Yeah,
um it's a journey, and things are going to happen, and you're never going to reach some ultimate level. It's not a video game. You're not going to beat
no,
life. Like,
right,
you're not going to get to the
right.
final boss, defeat him, and be like, oh great, I beat this game of life.
Yeah, and in terms of like going back to talking about, you know, climbing a mountain or climbing Everest, uh, and the numbers are going up every year, so it's not as rare to climb Everest as it used to be. But the amount of time they get to spend at the summit is like minutes.
Yep.
It's minutes, and they spend literally weeks climbing. And so you don't remember. I mean, there's a photo, and they hang a flag up there, and whatever. And I'm not for those that might tune in that have ever climbed Everest. You're awesome, right? I'm not minimizing the achievement of climbing the world's highest peak. But to your point is, when you tell stories about climbing the peak or climbing to the summit or summiting, whatever the terms are, getting to the top of Everest, the stories you're going to tell are about, we were at level 2 camp, level 3 camp, level 4 camp. It took us here. It took us there. It took us here. Your story won't be about how long you spent at the summit, because you're only there. You only get like, I don't know what it is, 12 minutes or whatever. You get a photo, and then it's back down. I mean, it took me 3 hours to climb, the 12,000 foot mountain in Estes Park, Colorado. And we sat up there for about an hour, watched the sun come up, and then took another 3 hours coming down. And all my kids talk about is on the way up and the way down. They don't talk about what we did while we sat there. And so it's a fantastic analogy, because it is far more about the journey, right? I think, going back to football, you would say, we would talk about this all the time towards the end of the season. And I remember Sean Payton specifically talking about this. He would say that as we got to the end of the season, or as we get to the playoffs, and his emphasis would be on the moment, right? Focusing on the moment, appreciating it for what it is, understanding that each year, no matter how successful or unsuccessful the year was regarding wins and losses, each year, the next year was going to be different. It's going to be a different group of guys. There's going to be different coaches. There's going to be different players, different trainers. There's going to be the whole identity of the team is going to be different. It's going to be a ton different, right? And he would always talk about the Super Bowl in 2009. And he said, he would say that we won the Super Bowl. The confetti comes down. They rope off, between the 30s on the field. They usher out the losing team. They don't even get to get on the sideline, get off the field as quick as you can. They roll the stage out. They bring the Lombardi Trophy out. They get a handful of players, the MVP, the head coach, the owner, a handful of people, and this is a bunch of corporate sponsors that are on stage with you. And you talk for about an hour. You celebrate. You go into the locker room, and half the team's already gone. And then the head coach, gets in there late, and the MVP gets in there, and then and the MVP jumps on a bus to the airport because he's going to Disney the next day. And so by the time you get back to the facility 2 or 3 days later, most everybody's already gone and checked out. You haven't seen each other. You didn't even get to celebrate together outside of maybe an hour, and then there's free agency, and then there's cuts, and then there's firings, and then there's all this different. And so after you reach the pinnacle and the height, you spend maybe an hour together with the team that you've been working for the last 20 weeks to achieve this ultra rare, fantastic goal, and you don't get to celebrate it very much. And in fact, it's kind of like, how quickly can it be dispersed? And tomorrow you wake up, and yeah, you're a Super Bowl champ, but you didn't really get to do anything after the Super Bowl. You're going to think back to the journey. You're going to think back to week 9 or week 10 or week 14 when we had to overcome 3 turnovers and go kick a field goal to win the game. You're going to think about week 12 when we had to, beat Seattle in overtime, whatever it is. You're going to think about those aspects. You're going to think back to training camp and the goal we set for ourselves and the work that it took to get to this point. You don't necessarily think about that high achievement. And that doesn't mean, again, I'm an achiever. I find a lot of satisfaction in what I finish, the work that I finish. But it's the journey. It's far more about the process and getting there and celebrating that. I think that's why people use the term journeyman as if it's an insult to me. Right. And I'm going, no, that's a badge, buddy. I wear that proud because the process of becoming a journeyman meant that, that I was there and I did it for a long time. And it wasn't always easy and it wasn't always pretty, but man, I did it. You call me a journeyman. Absolutely. I am a journeyman. And it is far more about the journey, and the journey is what shaped me and is what I remember. And so my level of achievement didn't necessarily reach Super Bowls or MVPs or starting calibers or whatever, but I still achieved a goal. But I don't hang my hat on what the achievements were. I hang my hat on the journey that it took to get there. So yeah, that's as I introspectively look back, that's a great point that you just brought up.
I have a fantastic book recommendation for you, which I think you're going to love because you brought up Everest a couple times and we're talking about the journey. So this is everything coming together. And it is this book written by Brian Dickinson, who was awesome enough to come on this podcast. But I first found out about him from a separate podcast. I don't know if you're familiar with, what is it called? Is it Soft White Underbelly? Is that the name of the YouTube channel?
That.
Yeah. So I first came across Brian because he did an interview on that channel. And then I read his book called Blind Descent. So he climbed Mount Everest. And when he got to the top, or as he was getting to the top, his goggles broke and he became snowblind. And he descended back down Mount Everest blind and by himself. Because I forget what they're called, not the shepherds, but the
Sherpa.
Sherpa, there you go. Yeah. Because the Sherpa, I'm forgetting the exact story, but the Sherpa had left. There was another issue with another team, with another member. And so Brian had to climb back down Mount Everest blind and alone. The book is fantastic. He is a fantastic person. But what's funny is even like if you read that book, 90% of it is, hey, this is what we're doing to prepare. Hey, we're getting to camp 1. We're getting to camp 2. Yeah. Here's how I'm feeling here. Like it's all the journey. And then there's like one chapter on, hey, we got to the top and we took some pictures, to your point, we planted the flag like, oh, this is cool. The view is awesome. And then you like go right back down. So it reminded me of that. I was like, that's so true. Cause even when I think back on, college, like I think a lot of people think back on college, and I would venture to guess, like if you put out a poll that said, hey, what do you remember from college?
Oh yeah.
I doubt a lot of people would say, oh, I really remember how happy I was when I got my diploma and I was taking pictures with my friends.
100%.
Like what I think about is the late nights with my friends in the library, the stupid stuff that we did sometimes, like all these stories that we had, the journey of going through college, the journey of living for the first time in my life on my own and figuring out how to cook and clean and do all those things. Like that's what I remember. I barely even remember graduation. Like I remember walking out on stage maybe a little bit and then like that was it. And that's why I love your examples with Sean Payton in the Super Bowl. Because it does seem like that as a fan, you're so happy for your team and you might be happy for a couple days. And even as a fan, you're just like, okay, that was cool. But you know what was cooler? Like week 15 when Brock Purdy threw 4 touchdowns and we beat Seattle. I'm a big 49ers fan, but
there you go. Yep.
Yeah. So like that's what I remember. It's crazy. It truly is all about the journey.
Absolutely, about the journey, and the journey is what shapes you. I try not to beat over the heads of your listeners my faith story, but I wore a scripture on my wrist tape since I was in the 8th grade, and it's Proverbs 16:9. It's a pretty well known verse. A man's heart plans the way, but the Lord directs his steps. right? And God gives us the ability, opportunity, I would even say responsibility to go out and to plan the direction that we have some autonomy, some free will choice over our lives to make decisions, right? He gives that to us. And then we surrender the right for him to direct how we get there, or if we don't get there at all, right? And little did I know, starting writing that on my wrist tape in the 8th grade, how pertinent that verse would be towards my career, because every again, every dream that a kid has is to go and be a starter, win a Super Bowl, to be all the things, right? Do all the things, and I was no different. And yet, every time I was just about to become a starter, I had an injury. Like I blew my knee out twice at the literally there was gonna be a change the next week, and one more opportunity in New Orleans, and I ruptured a disc in my back. Had the game I started against Carolina in 2015 and played really well. There was going to be talk about free agency in the offseason, going being somebody's bridge quarterback while they bring along a young guy and all this other stuff. And week 8 against Indianapolis, I ruptured a disc in my back, and it's like bad timing again, like third three, really, And so, but a man's heart plans the way, and the Lord directs all of his steps. And I can look back and go, well, yeah, I had plans, and I worked for opportunities, but God's the general of it all. He orchestrates the steps that I actually take, and I give that to him. But that doesn't mean that I didn't have any responsibility to make plans and then to go out and to pursue those plans. But it allowed me, again, going back to the end of my career, it allowed me the ability to be okay with how it turned out, because God did that, and it shaped me. And there were a lot of great things that came from the missing out on those dreams and goals, whatever, however you want to term that, not achieving the level of the heights of success that I had worked towards. And a lot of good came from that. But I look back on it when I tell my story, when I go and talk to schools or talk to businesses or churches or whatever, and I tell my story, it's far more focused on what happened through those injuries and lessons that I learned, and how that shaped me for later on in my career. It had nothing to do about the opportunities and the way that I played, whether good or bad. It had everything to do with the journey of experiencing the ups and downs, working through injury, and the things I learned, and who it made me become later in my career.
Luke, you've already graced us with an hour, but I'm just dying to ask you a couple more quick questions. We haven't even touched your NFL and your football journey. This is because it's been, yeah. Well, so you beat me to it. I would love to do a part 2, to dive into more of that, because I'm sure there's so many more stories and lessons that you can share with us. But I need to get a couple of these off my chest, because I'm just staring at my sheet here. I'm like, I have to ask Luke. We can make these quick though. So as we look at your NFL career, I'm gonna read you just some very basic stats that I'm sure you're well familiar with. 13 NFL seasons, 4th round pick in 2004 by the Cleveland Browns. You played for the Browns, the Bucks, the Jags, the Saints, the Falcons, and the Cardinals. When I read, that's right. Yeah, yep. That's right. So we'll take Cardinals off there. So Browns, Bucks, Jags, Saints, Falcons.
Yep.
When I read that back to you, what's the first thought that comes to mind?
My first thought that comes to mind has been, I wish I would have been drafted by the Saints. And I told Sean that when he called to say, hey, buddy, we're going to let you go. I had 1 year left on my contract. I was probably only going to play 1 more year. But I told him, man, I get it, Sean. I ruptured a disc in my back in 2015. I played 1 more season in 16, but my body wasn't quite right. I was still working through trying to get that back. And he said, "Hey, we just, with you and Drew together, we're by far," he said, "by far the oldest quarterback room in the NFL. We need to get younger." And they were attempting to draft Patrick Mahomes that year, and so I understood what he was getting at by trying to get younger. and and so I listen. I get it, Coach. My only, if I can regret, not that I would have any control over it, but man, I wish I would have been drafted by you early. I think, at the beginning of my career, I like how you do it. Having jumped around, bounced around, been at different places. I told him, I said, I can tell you with some certainty that this will be it. I don't think I'll go play anywhere else. Not that I didn't have opportunity. I mean, at that, like the next day, I had 2 teams calling, wanting to bring me in, and they weren't necessarily places I wanted to go play or go live. And I told him, I said, like the way you do it here, brought the joy, brought the fun, brought the just kind of everything that I love about football back to it, and I appreciate that. And so, but again, that's part of the journey. That's part of, but understanding that there are teams that not every team's the same in the NFL, right? I mean, you say I was drafted by the Browns, and I usually say that in sharing, kind of my testimony about my career, and everybody goes, "Oh." Like, yeah, you guys get it. Yeah, it's not the place that you want to be drafted to, right? And so that's not to say that I didn't enjoy my 1 year there. I felt like I was going to be the one to turn it around. Like that's the confidence that I had. Like, hey, y'all just wait till I get on the field, and I'm going to take you guys to the promised land. Like that's who I thought I was. And so that season is a whole nother story in and of itself. But the first thing that comes to my mind is, man, I wish I'd been drafted by Sean Payton early in my career. I felt like my career would have gone differently, maybe than it did, but maybe not. Maybe it'd been the same. But that's the first thought that comes to mind.
I have a couple questions about Drew Brees and Sean Payton, but I think we'll keep those for part 2 as a little teaser to get people to click into the second part of this interview. So a little tidbit on the whole Browns thing. I had Deshaun Kaiser on the pod, and he told me he was also drafted by the Browns.
Yep.
And he told me candidly, like, hey, if I get drafted to any other organization, I think I have a much different NFL career. The Browns at the time, you could even argue present day, are a bit of a dumpster fire, to put it nicely. And I think we're all aware. I think they're even aware inside the building. It's like, hey, we don't really have our stuff together here. But it was interesting to hear that from Deshaun, because I don't want to say that players usually don't admit that, but at least for me, it opened up the possibility and the understanding of how much it really means where you get drafted, like what team drafts you, what system you get drafted in. And that's the part as a fan, like I just thought like, oh, talent beats everything, right? Like if you have the talent, you can overcome. And certainly some guys do. Like I'd argue Mahomes is talented enough to where he probably would be able to overcome, some of the downfalls. Right.
Yep.
And so, like, I think, like, classic example as a 49ers fan, I'm going to bring him up, but Kyle Shanahan, right? Like, you go into that system with that coach, I mean, just look at what he did with Mac Jones, even with Sam Darnold, the 1 year that we had him, Brock Purdy now, Jimmy Garoppolo, like Matt Ryan with the Falcons. Like, he's the quarterback whisperer. And I think you have coaches like that in the NFL, like Sean McVay, even Kevin O'Connell.
100%.
So that's the part as a fan, right? Andy Reid. That's the part as a fan. I just didn't connect those dots, like how much situation and team and culture truly matters.
Yeah, well, it's easier to point to the player and go, well, the player sucks.
Right.
Right. It's just easier because there's sometimes our fandom gets in the way of reality, and as players. That and my brother and I played for just about half the league, and so we share 2 teams, and so the Browns and the Bucks. But as a player that has played on multiple teams, you walk in the door and you feel the difference, like quickly. Um, Sean would always say this: organizations. There's two categories. There are those that are for real, like contenders, and then there are those that are just selling hope and tickets, and that's all they aim to sell. They're selling hope and tickets. It's going to be the same season. It's going to be 7-9, or 8-8, or 7-10, or 8-9, or whatever. It's the same story every year. It'll be a revolving door of GMs. It'll be the owner will own it for 10 years and then sell. It's just there's a dysfunction with more than a handful of organizations in the NFL that just can't seem to get out of their own way. And I played for at least one of those, and he's right, and you kind of heard that. I mean, I remember hearing from other players when I was a rookie, and again, happy to be drafted, thinking that I was going to turn the thing around when I got a chance to start and all this other stuff. But hearing from other guys that had come from other places, going, man, this place is like, they do some stuff that's not kind of up to par. I was like, really? This isn't how the rest of the NFL is? Yeah. Oh no. And so after my first year, I get traded to Tampa, who, by the way, had the worst facilities in the NFL when I got down there. Our practice facility was literally about 300 yards off of Tampa International's blacktop airstrip. Like, our crowd noise when we practiced was jets and planes taking off. And we had, our meeting rooms were portable buildings, and yet they just won a Super Bowl, like in 2002. So when I got there in 2005, I was like, wow, this is okay. So the facilities aren't it. It's the people. It's the coaches. It's the GM. It's the owners that make this thing go round. And they're absolutely, it is about, because, and I tell people this all the time, speaking of quarterbacks, and I may be 64 out of this number, but there's about 7 or 8 quarterbacks out of 64, right? Out of the 2 deep, the starter and the backup, out of the top 64 in the world, right? There's about 7 or 8 that have something astoundingly different: poise, athleticism, arm strength, mental capacity, and processing. Right? They've got something different than the rest of us, and it doesn't mean they have all of them. But they have one of those, and those 7 or 8 are different. Okay, they're the Pat Mahomeses, they're the Josh Allens, they're the Lamars, the Joe Burrows. I would argue the Brock Purdy's that have a mind and an anticipation, a processing power that's just different from everybody else. Matt Ryan was the same way. Not overly athletic, not overly powerful in terms of an arm strength, but man, he could check boxes all fast. I mean, fast. Drew, same way. Now, Drew's superpower was both mental processing and accuracy. Never seen anything like it. Probably won't ever see anything like it ever again. And so there's a handful of, Brady had this ice in his veins, right? He could just, his blood pressure went down as the emotion of the moment went up. Peyton could think through it all quickly, and his ability to study and retain the things that he learned and prepared in the week leading up to the game, he could regurgitate precisely in the moment, right? And so there are 7 or 8 guys, only 7 or 8 in the league that have something different from the rest of us. The rest of the 52, 50, 48, whatever number you want to put on it, the rest of those guys, starter and backup, are all pretty much the same. I mean, it's a paper-thin shred of difference between all of us. We're all pretty much the same. We're all pretty much the same in our ability to throw. We're all pretty much the same in our ability to run an offense. We're all pretty much the same in our athleticism. We're all pretty much the same just in our overall capabilities of winning a football game. The difference is, who do we play for and what opportunities do you get? Because I defy you to name the last quarterback that Andy Reid didn't win with. Go back, find one. Tell me who it was. Because I can go back to Ty Detmer, Vince Young, Kevin Kolb, Michael Vick, okay, Pat Mahomes. I mean, Chad Henne. I mean, all these guys. Like, name one that didn't play well and win games. And you can't say, well, yeah, but look at the All-Star receiving corps. Name me those guys, right? There's an element of, man, the situation, the coach, the environment, the circumstances matter big time. I don't think in the situation that I was in Cleveland, okay, let's just go back to 2004. And this isn't me, for those that are listening. I'm not complaining or ranting or but you talk about things being different. Butch Davis resigns the week before we go play, okay, the New England Patriots. My first start was against the New England Patriots after they had won their 21st in a row game on their way to a second consecutive Super Bowl, 2 out of 3. My right guard that started in that game was a practice squad, not active roster, practice squad defensive lineman for the Baltimore Ravens the week before. Had never played offensive line ever. He was a defensive lineman, practice squad. And they brought him in, and he started at offensive right guard against, okay, let's see, I guess, was it Ty Warren? And like that defensive line, right? There was Vrabel on one side. There was Richard Seymour. There was like that defensive line. We had 22 players on injured reserve. 11 of those were starters. So I can't remember but some fraction of half the offense and half the defense were on injured reserve. And our head coach just resigned the week before we go play the Super Bowl champs. So the opportunities matter. The environment matters greatly. And so it is. It's easy to point to the player and go, well, he wasn't very good or whatever. Yeah, maybe so, but maybe that's also why, if you look at first round quarterbacks, the guys that get drafted in the middle part of the first round or even the later part of the first round have more early success and tend to have better long-term careers than guys that were drafted 1, 2, or like within the top 10, right? Because you've probably got a better team that you're going to, probably a better situation that you're getting drafted to, and it lends itself to, kind of a springboard to a little bit better career, at least early.
I have this take that I've shared with my friends, but I haven't stated publicly on this podcast yet, so I'm going to do it now. I think that these quote unquote offensive gurus, your McVays, your Shanahans, your Andy Reids, Kevin O'Connell, pick your guy. I think they are the most valuable head coaches in the NFL.
Oh, yeah.
Because they know how to get the most out of the most important position in the NFL, which is quarterback. You look at what McVay did with Baker that one year that he was in LA. Baker still nowadays talks about that one year he had with McVay as the turnaround point in his career. You look at what Shanahan did with Darnold. I mentioned it earlier. And the confidence that he was able to instill with him, even playing behind Purdy that one year in San Francisco. You just go around the league. You mentioned Andy Reid and the success that he's had with the quarterbacks. If we're talking most valuable head coaches, I think the offensive gurus, if that's the label that we're going to use for them, far and away, it's the most valuable head coach in the entire league.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would throw guys in like Kevin O'Connell and Sean Payton, and Sean had Jameis Winston, who had everybody kicked to the curb at 5-1 or 5-2 before he hurt his knee. He won games with heck, he put me in a position to win against Carolina in 2015, right? Kevin O'Connell, you look at Daniel Jones and the season that he had, and he talks about and I'm not tooting my brother's horn, but the year that he spent as a backup with Kevin and with Josh in Minnesota. Sam Darnold, obviously, most pundits thought he was garbage.
Hmm.
You know, they would say as much, and that you know he was a bust and everything else, and he's going to be one of only a handful of quarterbacks to win 13 plus games with two different teams ever. And so, you know, there's absolutely, I think, and the defensive protagonists on your that are listening to this are going to go, yeah, well, it's so much easier for the offense these days. Of course, you know, all the rules and they can't hit the quarterback and all that other stuff. The rules are the rules, whatever it is. But offensive coaches, I don't know how many defensive coaches are in this playoffs. I mean, McDonald in Seattle. I don't know how many. I can't off the top of my head.
You got D'Amico Ryans with the Texans.
D'Amico, right?
Vrabel, I guess, if you want to throw in that category.
Yep, right. So I think there's an aspect of, and maybe it's easier. I don't know. Maybe it's easier to. Maybe it's just more noticeable. But that's probably the bigger thing is it's just more noticeable in getting something out of a quarterback because for the high profile position, the microscopic, you know, the fishbowl rather position that it is. It's easy to see a guy that you thought may be underwhelming athletically or physically gifted or whatever, and yet he's thriving like a Purdy, who, you know, maybe if he's not with Sean or Kyle, excuse me, not with Kyle, I don't know, who knows, right? So,
Right.
yeah, I agree. And I had first, you know, met both Kyle and Sean McVay. They were quality control when I was in Tampa, when I played for Gruden. And so watching those guys kind of climb the ranks and do their thing has been incredibly impressive. And it's always been fun kind of watching the heights of their success and the things that they do with quarterbacks, that honestly that Gruden always wished he could do, wanted to do, and not that necessarily he couldn't, but just to see it come kind of full circle for them is kind of cool. But yeah, I agree with you. It's about the coach. It's about the environment, and those guys that can you know make the cream rise to the top, to for lack of a better analogy.
Yeah, I mean, even if you look at what Ben Johnson's, you know, has done in his first year with
Yeah,
Chicago. I mean, what is it? Chicago has never had a quarterback pass for 4,000 yards, which
that's
for
right.
being one of the oldest teams in NFL history is just a wild stat to me, especially when you think back. They had some pretty decent quarterbacks. I mean, those years with Jay Cutler, like Jay, when he was at
Yeah,
his peak, was a pretty damn
pretty
good
good.
quarterback.
Yep.
So that's just, but to in his first year to have Caleb throw for almost 4,000 yards under his offense and the system that he put into place just speaks to how great of an offensive mind he is. And I mean, we saw it in Detroit last year too, with what he was able to do with Goff and all those guys.
Yeah,
But
sure.
Luke, I'm just jotting down notes and questions here left and right for our part two of this of this
Cool.
interview because I
All
got
good.
so many. But I do want to respect your time today, and you've already given us an hour and 23 minutes here. So I think we'll end it here. For those who have stuck around to this point, there will be a part two of this interview if Luke is nice enough to come back on, and we'll get
Sure.
into more topics surrounding the NFL and Luke's specific journey. And I'm sure he has a lot of great stories as well. Luke, before we leave here today, where can people find you and more of your work?
Twitter. That's pretty much where I exist. I talk. You know, I think there's a point to having social media. I don't do a ton of it, but what I do, my purpose on social media is football and faith. And so, if that interests you, that's where I'm at.
Love it. We will put Luke's Twitter in the description of this episode. Go check out all his work. It's funny because you popped up in my Twitter feed recently, and I was like, oh yeah, I remember Luke McCown. And then obviously I reached out and I was like, I'd love to have you on the pod.
Yeah,
So it's funny. Social media is good at that, connecting people.
absolutely.
Luke, thanks so much for coming on, man. This was a pleasure.
Thanks, Nick. Appreciate you, buddy.